Yeah, we didn't want the distance sitting on chairs so formal, and so we wanted to be right here in your spaces. So, cozy, I do have deodorant if any of you need a little more security.
So if you're sitting on a floor, that means you can still make your beans.
We're still waiting for the drum.
Yeah, we're waiting.
Please come have a seat. Make yourself comfortable. The study room over here.
I think we have to move forward again.
Yeah.
This is another way. Think of yourself as the ocean. Move forward. We can put some more chairs over there if we have some of these non-short people.
So we're still waiting for the job. I'm going to be making a few announcements so we can say we started on time. And then 5:59.
Don't start there. For the record.
Yeah, good reminder, yeah. In the middle of a chat that goes up, we're going to remember you. Do make yourselves cozy, come inside. You can sit down over here, you can sit down over here, sit down anywhere. Okay, aloha no kako, yaho mai aloha. Po anu nui ke no kako, no ka mea ua hiki kino mai o ana ke kua, and he nia kui ka mai. So thank you for coming. It's a very special evening because Atipua has joined us. Hi, Kamuela-chan. Kamuela, come over, sit down over here. We have a few announcements. We do have a restroom over here. If you need to go to the restroom, I suggest you use one on the other side end of this building, or one that's going to hear your flush in the middle of the chat. There's one in that building. There's one in that building also. Those are the closest ones.
But flushing.
Flushing is ho-ho-ho. You got this ho-ho-ho sometimes. We want to. This gathering is really a gathering that is important to a piece of us that we don't want to lose in this near future, and that is the storyline of the human journey. In academia, oftentimes we put so much focus on the data and the instruments and the methodologies that sometimes it doesn't even matter if we know the person's name anymore. What matters is we got the data on that person, the demographics. Well, that's valuable because it does help us advance in a certain area. But what is much more older than that is the human storyline, the story of the human being as one impresses their experiences to the next generation and passing it on. That we don't want to lose. And because we're Hula people, we're looking at this through the lens of Hula. You can do it through farming, fishing, any kind, cooking. You can do it through anything. The story, keeping the story alive. Making sure that we have our own story so that we can engage in the storylines of other people, and so that our grandchildren will know that we have stories. Do come inside and have a seat. This series is called Kanahele series. There's public presentations such as this one, but there's also Hula workshops that are for targeted populations. But come inside. This is a whole semester's activity, and it's sponsored by the Kipuka Native Success Center and the Mokalele office up at UHH, as well as Hawaii Lifestyles. So this is Gil there. It was her idea to have me put all this together. And okay, so we have a number. So tonight, Anike Pua talking about her story about how she received the Pahu and what she did with the Pahu. And I just fill in as how it relates, how that translates now to what we do at the university here. Okay. This coming Saturday is an interesting one. At the same time, it's going to be facilitated by Kikuhi and some of the former learners of Edith Kanahele from the line of their grandmother and their mother. So we're looking at how a Kanahele family take what is sacred and translate it into the community via the Hula studio or to the halal system, and see how a family affects people's stories that's outside of their family. So that's a big one. And so we want to be here for that. Okay. Tonight, I think I'm going to just let her go. And we have some, oh yeah, what? We don't want to chant anymore.
It's always a little nerve-wracking starting a talk or a workshop. Anytime you're up first, you're supposed to get the crowd going, move it along, etc., etc. For me, it's always a little bit nervous and a little bit nerve-wracking. Anytime that I talk, it's still something that's different. I've never given this talk before. And as much as I've talked about Hula, this is totally new for me. Come inside, please. There's a chair over there. Come.
Go over here, sit up by me, come.
There's a chair over there. Don't reach there. Just cross, cross. Just fit yourself anywhere. And so it's a little nerve-wracking. I haven't given this talk before. When you asked me to talk about my mother-in-law, I said, yeah, I owe her that. To say something about her. Because she's given a lot to me anyway. And so it's an honor for me to be here to talk about Hula Pahu in relationship to who gave me the Hula Pahu and how I learned it, and how I was able to teach it. And the greater part is how we're able to be able to maintain the Hula Pahu and keep it alive and keep it going. And is somebody going to sit over there? Okay. Say that. And the Kuya chant is a chant that talks about cycles. And it talks about cycles in a big way, like elemental way. And but the cycle that it's talking about has to do with expansion. Expansion, growth, and continuum. That's what Hula is all about. Expansion, growth, and continuum. And as we go through this expansion, growth, and continuum, some of the things we have to do is learn about things that's going on around us, is appreciate what's going on around us, appreciate what is in our family, what our family has to give, what our family has what our family has gotten, what they leave behind, etc. And so as you're standing on the spot where you're going to learn these things, it's really up to you. And you have an option, whether you're going to do it or not. Okay. And so many people take the option to do it. And so in our family, as part of our family, taking the option to do it. And so some of the things that I'll explain to you is about this particular title that I'm using for the Kuya chant. Kuya chant again has to do with healing and continuum and cycles. I don't know if I said that before, but I'm probably going to say things over and over again. As I said, I was sitting talking before. Okay. So, where did you change it?
Verse 1. I identified or defined it, interpreted as this particular line: expand the auspicious instrument the voice utilizes. This is an ideology of the Pahu. This whole talk is an ideology of the Pahu. Now, how many of you take Hawaiian language? Orism.
There's more than skills.
That, okay, great. And how many of you take Hula or have dance? Oh, you know. Okay. Expand the auspicious instrument the voice utilizes. What is your interpretation of that line? Oh, by the way, I'm going to ask you a question. And I would like for you to answer. So this is not the kind of lecture where you just come and listen. Oh, yeah. Well, isn't she a good speaker? I am. Okay? What does that line mean to you? Did I put fancy words in my translation?
I'm going to try.
Okay, we're trying.
With the Pahu helps the Leo to ascend or even take on a sacred level, a different level than just the Vala'au, the regular, normal talking. It takes it to a more spiritual level, perhaps, or more, I don't know how to say this, ko'ikoi. Ko'ikoi level.
Okay. So are we saying the same thing? This is the thinking kind of thought. I want you to think right away. Let it roll. Okay, anybody else want to do this? Okay, I use these kinds of words to demonstrate a particular line because the idea of kukulu is to expand. And the whole idea, because it's coming from a kulia, the whole idea is to expand. And expand means to learn. Expand means to go to the next step. Expand means to pull people up with you to the next step. Or expand means to be aware of or have the knowledge of what's going on around you. Whether it's with people, whether it's your environment, whether it's your forest, whether it's the ocean, the whole idea is to expand. Okay? And to expand because of the Pahu kapu, or the auspicious instrument. And what is the Pahu kapu? What is the auspicious instrument that we have? The auspicious instrument that we have for some people are the body. That's the auspicious instrument. For other things, and I will show you different products of the Pahu. So there's many different kinds of Pahu that we have to be aware of. And so what I'm doing is taking you out into the big environment and then bringing you back down. Okay. So we all have the idea of what a Pahu looks like. Voilà. That's my only word in French. And but I don't want you to. I want you to focus on that as a what? Not as a hula instrument, but as a vessel. As a vessel. Okay. And as a vessel whose function is to utilize the voice or to bring out a voice. Okay. Sometimes that vessel, sometimes the vessel doesn't have is not audible. Okay. The voice is not audible, and sometimes it is audible. Sometimes the vessel is not tangible, sometimes it is tangible, but for everything that is expanding around you, there is a vessel and there is a voice. So do you get that? Are you thinking? Think really hard so you're going to think of everything around you. So the idea, there's three things there. One is to expand. One is that there is a vessel of some sort. And the vessel is responsible for something, and it's responsible for the voice, or the leo, or the sound that comes from it. Everything has a pahu, and everything has a voice. And because it does, it has to expand and move into cycles. Okay. And again, this is the ideology of the Pahu, according to Hula. Okay, go on. Thank you. So, for us that live on this island, this is the voice. This is the Pahu. Okay. And because it comes from that chant, oh, come in. Come in. Come in and stand on this side where you can actually see. There's nobody there who comes.
If you guys bring chairs from back there, you guys can bring one chairs down over there. Any space in the floor.
Okay, so what the heck was I talking about? Okay, this is this is one of the pahus that we're aware of, and this is one of the pahus that has a voice, and this is one of the pahus that kukulu. Okay, tell me about this pahu. Do we all agree with me? Yeah. Okay. You have to agree. Remember, give you a grade at the end. Okay. So, tell me about this pahu. Come on, you want to say something?
It's alive.
What?
It's alive.
It's alive. How does it expand? Expand by heat. It brings it out of its pahu, and it flows out into the expanse, and it makes land. That's what this is all about. It's a volcano. It's better for etc., etc. And the pahu that we see that is going off at the moment is an earlier shot of pool. And the actual Pahu that we see as we're looking at it, that's pool now. So if you fly on a helicopter and you look down in this. Okay, so that is the typical Pahu that we know of. And it's expanding. It is actually a Pahu that is audible. It's a Pahu that's tangible, and it's expanding. So that's what Pahu means. Okay. Go on. Oh, that's a check. You know, I haven't sat in for a long time. My allergies and problems for me. Okay. This is where the part of the chant that line comes from. And it's the end of the Hula chant. And it tells you how everything comes back into balance. And so that's why it ends up with Kanahele. And so what is Kanahele? Laws. And these are the laws of nature. These are the only laws of nature that I know that we have among the Hawaiians. But these laws of nature applies to everything. In this particular case, it's looking at everything. But if we look at it further, Pahu went through that. Okiki Kanahele is like if you allow things to flow. Things have to be allowed to flow. So what flows for us? What? Lava? Water?
Air.
We just gotta go outside already. Outside, see what's going on out there. Wind, rain, your blood system, absolutely, the ocean, everything that's necessary for life flows. Okay? So Hokiki Kanahele is the law of allowing things to flow naturally. That's the first law, Hokiki Kanahele. Kua'a Kanahele. If you're looking at the pele, if the plant is hot, it has to, what? It has to erupt. And so you don't build your house on the land that's steaming, or right down the hill from a steam vent. Yeah, you don't. Because the land is hot. What else is hot? What else is, when we can think of as when things are ready to give birth, that's okay. When things are ripe, that's okay. So when all of those things happen, you allow it to happen. You don't try to stop a lava flow by taking some dynamite down there and turn dynamite, big holes that a lava can go into it. No, it doesn't work that way. Okay. Kaiokia Kanawai, let me just talk a little bit about that. Now, all of this, you have to have that idea of the big problem in your mind. Because we're still talking about problems. Because we're still talking about expanding, and we're still talking about the life of flowing, and the life of having a container and having a voice. And as I said, everything has a container and a voice. Okay, Kaiokia Kanawai is the idea of having boundaries. Some people have boundaries. Everything has boundaries. The sun has a boundary. You know, it goes down south to the Kanaloa sun goes down south, and then it turns around and comes back north. So it goes from Makali'i star down to the Uakona star, bounce between those things as far as the east and west is concerned. And then it also moves across the sky. So it's in a boundary, it's in the corridor. If the sun is in a corridor, everything else has a corridor. Do you agree with me?
I do.
Except if the child is running wild. Okay. So, the stars have a corridor, Pele has a corridor, whether you want to believe it or not, she has a corridor. She's moving southeast. That's where the volcanoes are. Okay. And that's according to Kanahele, but it's new. I convinced myself that that's what's happening. So I'm convincing you.
It's working.
Because it's true. Everything has a boundary. And so the idea of the Pahu is the boundary. It has a boundary. The alamuku no kane me kanaloa, both the sun and the water. So the trail between, or pathway between the two is part of that boundary, the idea of the boundary. And kihoihoi kanawai is that if you're looking at the Puna area when Pu'o was going off and all the lava was going down and out over into the ocean, and what's happening there now? What's happening there 6 months after that big eruption? What happened there 1 year after that big eruption? Things began to grow. That's key hoi kanawai. Everything has to come back and has to grow. And the land is fertile. Lava is fertile as long as there's some rain, and the rain is possible because of all the steam that's going on. It might be acid. It's still usable. Okay. Come in, Manoa. Okay. That's the key. That's the kind of eyes we have. This particular mele is for Pele, and so it ends with no kuwakwala, no peso. But these are the kanawais. And the kanawais all have to do with pots. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Yeah. Wait. I'm going to see this guy over the thing that you're my little thing. Yeah. I'm going to show you other pots, okay, that we consider pots. So other form of pots. Go ahead. This is what we call our manu. And the our manu is the manu clouds when it's very
Windy.
Windy. When it's very windy. All the winds have a Pahu that they come from, either north, northeast, east, southeast, south, southwest, west, south, northwest. I have to think about that. But they all have a Pahu that they come from. The Pahu is not tangible, but it is there. And but the leo is audible. You hear the leo, you feel the movement. There's a rhythm to it. You feel the movement, and it expands itself. And then it goes back, and then it starts all over again. The cycle starts all over again. It's a pop. Okay? This is a Hua Manu. The Hua Manu is a pop. Yeah? It is, yeah. Some of you are looking at me like, it is a Pahu, okay? And it's tangible. Is it audible? To some, I think it may be audible. They may be able to hear something in there. If your baby is in your stomach, it is a Pahu. Is it audible? Sometimes it is. It sure is uncomfortable. But it's a Pahu. But once a Pahu out gets out and it expands, and you have a Leo that comes with it, it's on its way to a cycle. Okay? Voila. This is a Pahu Mana Mana. This one, the instrument is called Pahu Mana Mana. It's on a pai, and a pai is a little wall that it's built on, and the uprights that you see is called mana mana. But the instrument is called mana mana. And what the instrument does, it's tangible. This particular power is tangible. But the leo is inaudible. But the leo, what it's telling you, because it does tell you something, is that each of the mana manas and between the mana manas will align with stars. And if you take that alignment out to the other islands, it will align with craters. So what does that tell you about this? It has a voice. It tells you where this particular island that we stand on came from, and what all of, and how it's lined up with other craters. Now, if you go on the island of Bokumanamana, they have the Pahumanamanas facing all in different directions. Okay, that's still a mystery. It's south. That's the south. Okay, this Pahumanamana and other most Pahumanamanas on this island, we sort of know how they're fixed. Okay, so these are some of the Pahus. And so we're not, I don't want you to fix on Pahus is only that. Pahus are everything around us. They have a sound, has a voice. Okay. Hula Pahu, yay! That's what we're all paying for. That's what we're all going to be with. Hula Pahu is made up of two words. One is hula. And what is hula all about? Hula is about movement. Hula tells a story with the movement that it does. It talks about the movement of water. It talks about the movement of the rising of the sun or the setting of the sun. It talks about the movement of the unrenewing. It talks about the movement of birds, the blossoming of flowers. It talks about the missing somebody as they go away, pushing away. Okay, that's what hula is about. Hula is about the environment. It's a way of reflecting the environment. So all of you that dance hula, that's what you're doing. You're reflecting the environment. And not only are you supposed to be reflecting the environment, you're supposed to know something about the stuff that you're reflecting on. that you're becoming part of. The Pahu is this instrument. This is a Pahu Tamapa. This is according to the map. And what the Pahu does is keep the rhythm of the earth. Okay, the rhythm of the earth. Where's the Leo? Where is Leo? The Leo is the Leo Kanaka. It's the holy. And what the holy does is, again, reflect the environment. And the Hula is a byproduct of the holy. The holy is more important than the Hula. So when we go to Marymount and we watch people in huge drums, bring up the huge drum in your head. For me, anyway. For before, again. No, this is the rhythm of the earth. You allow the rhythm to come in. It has a big piece in it. You allow it to happen. Most of our skins are shark skins. You have to follow the shark. Make the shark come alive. Okay? I'm just a big fan of it. It doesn't do it justice. Okay. So up with that picture. So we all understand that. What is the Leo over here? What is the expansion? What is the expansion? I didn't ask that before. What is the expansion here? Two or three opinions, whatever you have in your head, say it out.
Voice movement, I mean, the movement of the arms. You're energizing the space and moving it, so it's
Okay.
expanding out. It's just kind of what comes to me about that. The voice is expanding, it's going from here, it's going out there, it's moving the hands, it's pushing that energy around. So everything's expanding from out the out.
Okay, I got you. Anybody else?
Ideas, not Ike. The knowledge expands to the holy.
The knowledge expands, expansion of knowledge. Because you're supposed to know what you're talking about when you chant, yeah? And the dancers are supposed to know what they're dancing about when they dance, yeah? And you're supposed to be able to feel the rain, and to feel the movement of the water, and to feel the movement of the winds. Okay? If you don't, you gotta go home already. Okay, you gotta feel that. You gotta know it. You gotta go out in the environment. Otherwise, you're not reflecting the environment. You're just going through the motions. Okay. So you don't want dancers to just go through motions. You want dancers to know what the heck they're dancing about. Feel the water. Feel the sun. Feel the emotion or the movement of living water. Okay. Okay, we can move on. Thank you. Okay, now this is a little bit about me. This is sort of my history. This is my grandmother, Mary Kelly Cueva, Ahi-Ena, Kanahele, and now Fuji. Her last name was Fuji. She's married to a Japanese man. That was her second marriage. He was a lovely man. I don't know, I didn't know him. He was a lovely man, yeah. Grandpa Fuji. Grandpa Fuji. So, yeah. There was married to him. Yes. Yeah. She knew it. Okay. She was the one that taught us Hula when we were little. She was the lead dancer. She learned Hula Pahu. She was raised in Hula Pahu until she was 8 years old. From when she was little, she was almost a baby, and we took her and raised her until she was 8 years old. By the time they were here, it's already And so she came out and lived her life there. Got married and danced and continued to dance. She wasn't really a big hula that we sort of have an idea of who hulas are. But she taught constantly. And some of the people that she taught constantly were people in the community and her family. Her family had to dance. We danced. And so initially we learned our dances from her. She taught Hula because we live on this island, because that's what they do. She lived till she was 65 years old. And the other picture, of course, are the idea of the expansion of what she learned or her knowledge of hula and her need to pass it on. So she passed it on. My mother is standing in the middle over there, and we're of course up there at the Pahu. She passed it on to my mother to that generation, and then my mother passed it on to my sister Nawani and I, and so we didn't have an option. We just took it and went with it. And that picture was taken in, I don't know, 77 or 78, something like that. But I lived on the mainland in San Francisco for like 10 years, from 63 to 73. And that was just the right time for San Francisco, because it was alive and it was going through a big political change, big changes of values. And so people were revolting against what the government was doing, what was going on. And then they were re-looking at people of color. So you have all the black movements. Yeah, that was happening in San Francisco. That was great place to be. We had the Chicano movement. And so with all of those different kinds of movement, and then the 8 Ashbury Street movement, yeah, it was fun to watch. It was, because, we look at the flower children that lived at that particular time and that made a lot of changes. They made a lot of changes. Okay. Most of them were very intelligent. I mean, they smoke pot. They're very intelligent, and they made a lot of moves as far as the government is concerned. They protested a lot. And so you learn a lot from what they did, what the black people did, what the Chicano did. And so in 1973, we decided to come home. And we decided to come home because I wanted to get into Hawaiian things, because our daughters, Kekui and Kui, were born up there. And Kekui was 6 years old, 7 years old when she came home. And we was 3. But I wanted them to come home to Hilo. And my husband's from Honolulu. But I wanted them to come to Hilo to learn to dance and learn to live among the Hawaiians so they understand who they are and what they are and what they have to do. So that's another way of passing it on, the expansion, who you're building. So that's kind of where we went, but in all of our dances that we learned, we only had the Ipo plus the other little implements, the Kamehameha. That's what we danced with. Okay. And that's what we learned from. In 1974, we went to, about a year after I came back, we went to Honolulu. We were asked to Honolulu because they were just beginning to have all of these hula workshops in 1973, 1974. And they were reteaching people hula dances. They call it hula. And We call it Hula, and they call it Pahu. And so we're reteaching people how to dance those dances. And so we're invited to go to teach workshops, but we were also invited to perform on stage after the ending of the workshop. Everybody would come to the performance. It was a very formal thing. It was on stage and with lights and everything. And all the big kumuhulas that are big kumuhulas in those days, we all sat in the front row. Very interesting. Well, I didn't go any of them because I just didn't know everybody else to me. But, so everybody don't want to be judged by them because they are the ones that you have to go to be okay, etc. And so we went to dance at that, and we danced our particular kind of dances, and they were just, what is that? And the dances that we did all the time, you know, for generations is how we dance. They didn't understand that. And we hummed up and down, did the whole moves, going round and round, and yeah, that was totally foreign. The Hula stood up in big applause. And yeah, they understood that, you know, from a different time. And so by that time, and even before that time, Hula had become a byproduct of entertainment instead of a cultural tradition. And so the Hula workshops that they were having in the 70s kind of gave a little bit nudge to help the culture rebuild itself and put some blood into the culture. And so anyway, that's where we were at that particular time. That picture. Okay, we can go. And I wanted to show this picture because if you look, he has a box in the front of him, a kind of a trapezoid box. And this is a koninika. Now, I told you that and he and my grandmother was almost the same age. My grandmother was just a little bit younger, but she danced with him. She went out to Hula and danced with him. She was his dancer. One of the things that he did teach us is the big halaus. That was his dance. He was very flamboyant, but he was a kumula. He taught a lot of people. And he was well respected. But he was from Hilo. But that was his Pahu, and that was also his ipu. So nobody questioned that because he was well known. Okay. And that's what he used all the time, that Pahu and that. So again, it is a Pahu. And it does what he wants it to do. And he still gets to expand the rail in there. Okay. But this, I thought I would show you the picture. Okay, that was my grandmother's friend. Okay, now this is the other side of the coin as far as my husband's side of the family is concerned. I didn't think they had anything cultural in it. They sang Hawaiian songs and ukulele and stuff like that. I didn't know them well. And I certainly didn't know my mother-in-law. She was a little bit grouchy. Well, actually, she was very grouchy. But I didn't know her well. I knew that she had lots of talent. She had a great voice. She quilted. She made leis. She made shell leis. All kinds of that. All kind of Hawaiian things she did. I didn't know what else she did. And so when we came home in 73, in 74, my husband, Edward, went back to Manoa to get his master's in history. Because that's his master's. And in Hawaiian history, but there was no such thing as Hawaiian history. In those days, it was back in the old days. And so he made up his own program for Hawaiian history. So he had to bring in some Polynesian history as part of his Hawaiian history. And so he went to school for about a year and a half to get his history degree. And so during the ending part of his degree was during the summer. And so I went to Laie, he's from Laie. So I went to Laie and I taught a couple of classes at the church college there, something Hula and Owen. And while my husband was finishing up school, so I stayed here for about 2 months almost. And he went to school, and I stayed there, and I stayed with her at my mother-in-law's house. She never really invites people to stay at her house because this was her son. You know, I'm coming along with the son. And so one morning we were sitting, we wake up early in the morning, she fixes breakfast. She's very efficient boy. Fixes breakfast, get everything clean, scrubbing it. She's doing it. And one morning she asked me, "You ever learn how to Pahu?" And because she knows my family, she said, "I knows our family. They're Mormons, we're Mormons." Okay, so all Mormons know each other. She said, "You ever learn how to Pahu?" And I said, "Oh, yeah." And so I didn't know who was going to teach me. Obviously, I was going to teach. And she said, "Okay." And so she got her Pahu out. This is her Pahu. She got her Pahu out, and her puyu and her book with all the words in it. And I said, "Oh, you want to teach me?" She said, "Yeah." Who else would teach you? So I said, "Okay." And so for a month and a half, every morning except for Saturday, Sunday, we danced. And I was in my 40s. I was in great shape. I had good health. I wasn't breathing hard. And I was enthusiastic about learning it. And the other thing, to me, this is what was missing in our dances, the Pahu. And because we have chants like I just did earlier, and that talks about the Pahu, but we're not doing the real Pahu. And so to me, this was a great chance to learn it. And so we danced and we chanted, danced and we chanted. She was a good teacher, but she was going to teach it how she learned it. So she wasn't a Hula. Hulas go through evolution of their dances. And sometimes when they feel like they're tired of this dance, you're going to change it. Okay? And so the dance changes. She was not that kind of teacher. How she learned it is how she was going to teach it. And is how she expected you to teach it. Okay? So she was very adamant about how I did my steps. And it was very different from a lot of kind of dances I was used to, where you move the top of your body around and around and stretch out, and things like that. Yeah, it's not. The top of the body a little bit more stiff, and the hips move a lot. It doesn't move naturally. It moves because you're pulling up the leg, and it moves with the leg. And so it was a different kind of dance. And so I had to relearn how to dance all over again because of that. And I also had to relearn this instrument. I didn't know this instrument. I didn't know how to beat it. I didn't know what the different beats were on this instrument. So it took a little while to learn all of that. And to learn the chants. Because by the end of the time Tia taught me, she wanted me to do the chants. So it's a good thing I have to learn at that time. And I was enthusiastic about learning it. I was 200% I was going to learn it. And I was going to be able to bring it home, and I was going to teach it to girl out and work with dancing. But the other thing I found out about it is she had an urgency inside of her to teach it. Because this is what she learned, and she graduated like in 1935 from the dance class. And this is 1978. So that's how many years? Almost 30 years. What? never did. She remembered how she was taught, she remembered how to dance, she remembered how to chant, and how well she danced. But she had an urgency to teach this dance. She had an urgency to pass it on and make sure that it got out there. See, again, the expansion. And so the idea of moving it forward was what she wanted to do, and she knew that she would not do it with her family because they were not interested in dancing. They were not interested in what she did. You know, she did what she did, and she just did it on her own. She was always on her own. But they were never interested in dancing. And they probably never saw her dance. Yeah, what did you? Yeah, they probably never saw her dance. And so that was amazing to me. That, so in my mind, because I think this way, I was put in that situation actually early. And I had an option, and I took the option. And so I really didn't have a choice. I had to do that. And I met my husband because I went back, because I was living in San Francisco by myself while I was with my cousins. I was going a little bit wild. And I was a little bit wild, so I said, okay, boy, you gotta stop this. So I told my mother, okay, I'm going to come home because I'm going to go back to school. She said, okay. So she said, okay. And so, so I went back to Hawaii, the church college, because that's where I started. And I stayed there one semester. And I met him. So I was thinking, I went back there just to leave. Because I really didn't want to go to school. But I have to get away from there a while. And then he went to Utah to finish his bachelor's. And I went back to San Francisco. And then on January 28th, 1965, he came out from Utah, picked me up in his car. He said, let's get married. I said, oh, okay. He said, just like that. Again, you have an option. And I took it. It was a good marriage. That's the 35 years. Okay, but she also came along with it. And that expanded and we're out doing it. And what we could now teach in the halal. Because we got the Hula Pahu from my mother-in-law, who is my family, and she got it from a Hula, paternal. I have to apologize for the really bad pictures I have of her, and I feel bad that we didn't really include pictures of her, because when she came to live with us for a while, she really got me. She had many daughter-in-laws, but she lived there. And she lived at home. And then she was very forthright, very just don't know how to get it. She said, oh, come here for once you make cake, I show you how. She showed me how to pull it up. Okay, anyway, it brought me her. And her name is Agnes. Did I tell her name? Oh, I'm sorry. Her name is Agnes Lani Sanford Kanahele. Okay. She has a really good genealogy. Anyway, okay, let's go on. This is Pahu. Samuel Pahu. He was well known Hula like what do you know? And Samuel Pahu was a man's man. He used to be a big prison guard. And then he went, but he was a Mormon. And he got a bunch of Mormon women to come to dance. And fucking the dancers. Anyway, Samuel Kanahele is one of the women. And for a year they danced every day except Saturdays and Sundays. Every day for the evening from 6 to 9. And at the end of the year, he would and 35. And see his drum? The design of his drum is like my drum. My drum is made of Hula tree. And the Hula tree was knocking, and he's from Kahana Valley. And the Hula tree was knocking from the valley. So all the women had to go up, or they took their husbands. They all had to go up with their husbands, got the Hula tree, that one fell the tree, she made 2 Pahus. One that she used, the other became a umbrella holder. Oh yeah, umbrella holder. Oh, shame. I didn't know she had a second one, otherwise I would have probably. And I only saw it years after she died. So I couldn't tell her I wanted to hear. Okay, anyway, this was her Hula. And he was the one that taught her all of these dances. Okay, next, please. And this is the graduating class. And I'm going to show you where she is. This is her. Pretty girl. She's pretty. And this is, who is it? Emily Zudemeister. Of all of them that graduated for him, only 3 of them taught dancing after that. Emily Zudemeister actually had a halal, and she still does have a halal. She did. She does. And her daughter carries on the halal, and her granddaughter carries on the halal. So we talk about expansion. It's there. It's a very necessary part of the expansion of traditions. Okay. The other that taught was a Hattie Howe. She was from Latvia. Some of these women were from Latvia. My mother-in-law was from Latvia. And Hattie Howe also taught for a little while, but she didn't teach. She didn't teach in the hall. She just taught different individuals. My mother-in-law only taught different individuals if she wanted to. You know, if she looked at you and you said you wanted to dance and she didn't want to teach you guys. Well, I don't want to teach you. You know, so it's not that she's going to teach everybody. She has to eye you up first. And, but she passed it on. So she's the other one that passed it on. Otherwise, yeah, the rest of them. And so he had other individual students that went to him also, that danced. Yeah, and so that's all I have. Do you have questions?
So that's the daughter-in-law that she taught?
And the other ones didn't know anything. That's what she, they don't know nothing. I don't know why my son married. Yeah, and she was like that. She was very forthright. That's what she was. And she will probably tell them to their face. That's what she thought. No, she only taught me because she had an urgency to pass it on. She had an urgency that it get taught. And she knew that we had, you know, in our background, we had practicing a lot. And she knew that it was taught. And she, once you come here, over here and watch us dance, and she would teach all the people are dancing. It's not what I thought. It was perfectly bad. But it was an honor to receive it. You know, it was an auspicious gift that you gave me. And that I was able to pass on to the halal members, and then they need to pass it forward. And so that's the whole idea of, to me, the Pahu is to continue to pass it on, expand, pass it on, cycles. That's what life is all about. That's what traditions are all about. That's a renewal of earth things are all about. But there is a sense of, in all of this, in all the cycle and the expansion and the dying and the rebirth, there's a sense of balance that has to be there. And a sense of balance, in all of these problems, there is a sense of balance. And so in your own problem yourself, you have that, you have it, sometimes you have this feeling of, and something tells you, bleh. What is that called? When I said I had options for to do things or not, I really did it. It was instinctual. I do it. And it is very much part of, and part of all of us to have options. But for some of us, we're going to take the option because we don't have the choice. For some of us, we just or you don't have the talent for it. And you don't have the wherewithal to carry on. But that was my learning experience from my mother-in-law. And she never taught anybody else after that. She was Pahu. She handed me Pahu, she handed me the book of all of her songs and chants, and gave me the blessing. And I had a uniki, I guess. I have to look at it as a uniki. As I said, I was very honored there to receive that, what she was waiting to give, and what she had an urgency to actually find somebody to pass it on. So it's not so much right place at the right time, but it's the place she's supposed to be. And things happen.
Did she have a lot of dancers that she taught, or was it all just
She taught Pahus, and then she taught Hula, the Holas, the Pahu,
Is that what the halal? What the halal?
yeah. Well, one of the ulis that I really like, I forgot the motion. But I remember the problem. But then when I came back, I choreographed and a lot of that was from that.
How long did you train with her? How long did you train?
With her? With Agnes, month and a half. Every day. Yeah. And we changed the chant. And she had a really good chanting voice too. She spoke away. So she knows what she's talking about. I learned to eat the Pahu. I learned different beats on it. And I learned to dance. So for a month and a half, that's a lot of stuff. Especially if it's brand new. And although we do the same kind of steps, like the white Pahu, because we don't have steps like that, we just do the step. Unless we do weddings all the way to the dance. It's a little bit more interesting than the white Pahu. But we learned the chant was another challenge. Okay, do you have any other questions?
Was there a lot of influence on your learning, being that you were living in IEA at BYU?
A lot of influence?
Yeah.
Well,
The religion, dress,
oh, yeah.
things that you could say, or movements that you could do
No,
or couldn't do?
I don't know. Wouldn't allow it. Culture is one thing, being white is one thing, religion is another. Yeah. We did what we wanted to do, we did what we had to do.
Yeah, I kind of find it fascinating that many of the Pahu back then were Mormon
Yeah.
and how they were able to integrate, I don't know if that's the right word or not,
Yeah,
balance,
balance.
you know, their religious beliefs with their cultural beliefs.
Yeah, he was one. But he taught well. And the other thing about his teaching is he also did Hula. And so a lot of his Hula Pahu was very masculine. So it's like, nobody else does it like that. Everybody else. So this is, that's very typically San here.
Well, why, do you know why he only chose women to dance for him?
I don't know if he only chose, he chose this group of women actually to dance. They were all married. So they all had homes, but for 1 year, they were dancing in the evening. So for 1 year, their husbands had to cook them.
Is there something about the female form of physical conflict? It's conducive, you know, the female form that is conducive.
I don't think so. I think the body form is the body form. It's just the way the body moves. No, I think Pahu is as masculine as.
Is it going to elevate the woman?
To what?
More masculine? Is it like an acceptable?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. If you teach a dance that way, you have to dance it that way. And she was very adamant that teaching this way and it's the way you dance. Okay. So the whole thing. So as I said, Emily Zudemeister didn't like that masculine form. So because she had a halal and she taught for many years, she changed it. And we call it different like that. She didn't like that.
Another thing we might want to consider into the discussion about masculinity and femininity is if it's an American kind of imposition. Because I think what was being said, the way they had to dance the way Puaha'a Hill dance. So that's when they could tell the students were Puaha'a Hill because they danced like him. And when Agnes taught Pua had to dance like her, who danced like Pua. So it had nothing to do with being feminine or masculine. You just had to do the dance. So I think in Emily Zudemeister's thing, she was the one that actually told me. So it's not something I read, that she was very masculine, was very Hula, and she just wanted to teach women, and she wanted to be more feminine. So the idea of more feminine made me think, how did you arrive at what is more feminine? So oftentimes we might impose, or we're unconscious. We might take some of the colonization residual might enter into how we relate to Hula. It's not a bad thing, but we just want to be aware of it, because other than that, in this where it didn't, gender was not even discussed, you just did it. Although gender now is a huge piece of the movement because of the large illegal occupation and all of the political things that fall into the culture. Now, it has to flow. So it's interesting when we talk about the Mormons having a huge, even though they had their belief systems, when we look at the Pahu as a flow and an expansion under her formula, then you see that it's going to go no matter what you are. If it's
Yeah.
meant to go, it's going to find the right person.
Because it's a
to
natural,
go.
it's a natural movement. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's a beautiful thing that whether you choose to not be the person or to be the person, it's going to find, whether you today or somebody else tomorrow, it's going to find. So I guess the question is, when do you say yes? Or if you don't say yes, then you don't want to turn 20 years from now, but I should have, because then it's going to go to someone else. And with many stories in Hula that where you think it's going to go that direction, and it just swings, because the dances have to be danced. But these chants sometimes need a body. And like your daughter.
So was there anything in the repertoire that you know of that Grandma Agnes did not or could not remember or did not pass you or chose not to pass you that came from Hula?
No. That's whatever she had, whatever she remembered. And it was 35 years, 40 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a while.
When she came to Hawaii to live with you, did you discuss with her, continue to?
No, it was done.
That was,
Yeah. It was done.
did she ever want you?
No, she didn't.
She gave it, she just gave it.
Yeah.
She just gave,
And she gave me her power and
I think an important feature was the Pahu actually did go back to Laie, years removed, and I remember going to a family reunion. And all the family got, this is the Kanahele family reunion, it's a different kind of a Hawaiian family reunion. Very proper, you know, it's a different kind of Hawaiian family. It was, and all the families got up and did something. But Kekuhi and Hui Hui and the mother did the Hula Pahu, and they dressed in Ilima and the white, you know, a very Oahu style Ahu, and they did these dances, and the family learned, I guess I don't know how they knew, but they knew that it came from, I guess Hua or Edward made the announcement or the introduction that these dances came from their mother. And it was interesting because as Kekui's husband, I was just sitting way at the periphery, so you just gotta watch what's going on. Because it was almost as if the family was content that at least one person in the family knew these dances. It's not like, oh, we want to learn, we want to learn, we want to learn. It was like, those dances are alive. Grandmother's legacy is carrying on, and they're secure with that. It appeared. Because none of them then came after it says, can we learn, we want to. They were just really happy that somebody had the kuleana and was doing it.
there was one granddaughter that wanted to learn. She was in the mainland, and she was attached to her one side, so she wanted to come and learn. And we taught her some things.
So, you know, it's some...
It's something that her grandmother wouldn't agree with.
Oh.
Yeah.
So
We just taught it to her because it come from her grandmother, but if she would take it from her grandmother, because she's fussy about how you dance and what she's teaching.
So the idea is sometimes we put a lot of attention on the individual, but if you look at the family system, and you might want to inventory who knows what, and who's doing what. How is it expanding or not expanding? Is it necessary? Because again, this modern world puts the attention on the individual, and sometimes we have to. But when we look at the larger extended family, we see that there's a larger base of knowledge systems. So it may have been, it wasn't, in my mind, it wasn't a rather a right or wrong discussion. It was like, oh, and that's right, at least somebody has a kodana to carry it. And they're just really, really happy that, and then of course, there's always a competition on who knows what in the knowledge system. So that, I think Edward won that one. That his family was able to keep something alive that didn't go anywhere else.
Well, they always knew that he was a smart girl.
Yeah, they did have that. There was a little competition.
Really, they always knew he was smart.
Kelly, you had a question?
Yeah. Was, do you know, Pahu Hill's Nicola silence was inherited, or if it was something that he created, and if it was passed down to his class?
That's a good question. I don't think he inherited it. I think he learned it from somebody. But again, in his learning, it was a necessary thing for him to continue it. Because he had that urge to do it. And he did continue. And so that's why he became well known as a Hula. But I think that's something that he learned.
And then he knew multiple versions of the drumming, which made me think that those drummings may have required multiple versions of the dance. Because how he's recorded drumming these dances that we learn to dance is not the way that it was much more simpler than to teach in that 1 year format. I think his very complex system was, multiple ways. So he knew multiple versions of Hula and the multiple, he knew long and short versions and different drumming. So some things was interesting. He taught to a class to continue, and then that was not all he did. He sort of was known for, and he was the only one that is known to have drummed the way he did, unlike what everybody else was doing. So that's something to investigate also. How many versions of something and how do you keep it separated or, so it doesn't. Roxanne?
In looking at the ideology of expansion, and I think back to what HCC to me has really done more than any other school kind of thing for community is we have the examples of the expansion within the family unit, but when you have to take something and you expand it out to community, like through ha'akumalai or halauki'a or things like that, what kinds of things do you have to consider that's different when you're trying to expand so broadly and you don't necessarily have I don't know if it's luxury, but you don't have that one-on-one thing to go, no, not like that, like this. How is that the rearing, I guess, different when you're expanding like that?
I guess that's like a regular education system. And you have to do the curriculum to that, to fit that. Because we don't have the luxury sometimes of teaching somebody for half of their lifetime. Sometimes you have a weekend to teach them, and sometimes you have a couple of days to teach them. And so you want to give them as much as possible according to their limits as possible. So you have to have some kind of curriculum in your mind as to what you can give and what you cannot. And there is a limit for that kind of teaching. But you're going to work them. If you have, for instance, the workshops that I was talking about that started in 1974, there was only a few days to do the workshop, and everybody came to do the workshop. And if you were in a workshop, in our workshop, when you left, your body was sore. Okay. But we wanted you to learn it, and you want to learn it, so you're going to learn it this way. And all of the people that came were anxious to learn it, and they were willing to get into that position of having a sore body, but being able to learn from a different style and different things.
So the Hula program here at Hawaii Community College is actually the brainchild of Hula. When she was here, it came on the heels of the Hula conference that we had in 1999. So after we had that world, this is the halal, which just ended this last cycle, completed this last summer. This is a great transition or tie-in with the idea that a kumu has to know multiple versions of the dance. Because at the end of that conference, it was a successful conference, but then Hula had this, she had a dream. She had a dream. The dream will expand, whether you're going to participate in it or not, whether you're going to say yes or no. It's going to expand somewhere. And so it expanded here. And what she wanted, what she ascertained post-conference was that the choreography of Hula was not in danger. Everybody was around the world was dancing Hula, and there's some beautiful dances. And of course you have all gradations of dancing and all gradations of philosophy. I'm being quite kind. But one thing she saw that needed expansion, needed flow, there was too many obstructions, and was the rituals in Hula. Everybody was willing to do research and recreate dances and learn from each other, but nobody wanted to touch ritual. Like really meaningful ritual. They would either Christianize the ritual, or they would articulate the ritual in academic terms so that you enter the ritual via another door. She wanted those rituals to be alive for the sake of it being a Hawaiian ritual. And if you're not Hawaiian, you have to become Hawaiian within that ritual. She didn't want an apology or bending of the ritual. Accommodating the ritual. It was like, no, you accommodate yourself into the ritual. So she wanted this Hula program. And up until then, I remember she brought it to us. Kekui and I were a little bit uncomfortable because we grew up in a world where Hula belonged to the family. And then the family extended it through the halal system. We were told that. It was just how we conditioned ourselves to relate to that. So she said, let's bring it out. Now, all the Hawaiian studies programs, I would say many, statewide, had Hula attached to it. Because we've never lost Hula. We never had to recover it. It was always there in some form. But what they didn't have was a degree in Hula. A degree meant we would have more engagement with the student. So not just a weekend or a semester, but maybe 2 years. It was here, it was 2 years. So she went at that route. And then at that time, I was still at UHH as a lecturer, a very successful lecturer there. And then there was a full-time position here, Hawaiian Studies position. And I applied to it, thinking I would teach just Hawaiian Studies courses. And then this Hula, it was a grant. There was a grant that actually father-in-law and mother-in-law and some other Hawaiian faculty put together that gave that trust of that idea, that expansion for the Hula degree. And then I had 3 choices: Hula, farming, and fishing. So when I got the job, she said, what do you want to teach? She said, I'm not going to do farming, and I'm not going to do fishing. I only did Hula all my life, and I've had to do all of any of those other things. I said, I'll do Hula. And then, got the job, started to write the curriculum. So I looked at her and I said, what am I going to teach? Because I realized something. Hula in halal cannot possibly be the same as Hula in college. And then I wasn't a kumu Hula. I was a student. So I realized I was in a little twist. And I asked her, well, what do I teach? I told people, what do I teach? Because I asked my mother, I said, I think Hula. So it's going to start next semester. So what am I going to teach? She says, I don't know. Figure it out. We've never done this before. So what did I have to figure out? One, I couldn't teach the dances of halal pikui because I wasn't willing. She never told me I couldn't. But I intuitively knew that I would not position myself to be responsible for these legacy dances that really account. They're connected to the ancestors. And you're going to teach them, you know what the students are going to do with it. So I was really careful. And I knew that nobody told me that. I was just paranoid. that I would have to teach something, and you know, in halal you can control it more, or you can kick people out. You cannot do that in college. You can curse them out, but curse. But it's just, you know, we just give other options for you to consider degree changes. But I created a curriculum foundation on halal Kikuhi's dances. So even the Hula Pahu that I taught, being that this is the Hula Pahu evening, the Hula Pahu, the Ohilo Oi set, follows very closely what the set she inherited through her mother-in-law. So it follows, but it wasn't identical, because that was one way I would protect these dances from, I don't have the right word, but contamination. Yeah. Or, you know, you cannot compromise it. I wasn't willing to compromise this. This takes years to learn. And it was years later when I was made a Hula, which was all a surprise to all of us who graduated, because we weren't planning to be Hula. We was just going to retire in a beautiful world to just dance Hula. But we were turned into Hula. We were given the option to teach or not teach. We weren't required to teach. I took the option to teach something. And that's when I selected, very much like Agnes did, from the pool of dances that I had, people that could actually learn these dances within a given period of time and learn it well. And so that was one, that had multiple kauliluas. Yeah, some for just the college people, and then some for the higher proficients that was willing to give their life to the dance and willing to commit. So this is how it worked out here, and that's why I think we're very successful at Hawaii Community College. Other Hula programs are asking how it is that we teach, and the rituals that are part of it. We're one of the only halal on campus that have a kuahu. And we're able to find a way within the academic processes to really push forward to let that kuahu flow without compromising the kuahu nor the academic.
The kuahu can be academic.
Yeah.
Yeah, because kuahu has to do with the environment. And it has to do with the transpiration and the rainfall and that cycle.
So we took it there. We took it there.
And so, yeah, it can be academic.
So, you know, I really like the idea of the flow and the expansion. I think I'm going to just use that for a while. Because then sometimes we want to take all these workshops, but then what do you do with it? You know, and sometimes we just want to learn so many Hawaiian things, which is great. But then the next question is, well, how's it going to expand, or will it? How's it going to flow? How's it going to build new considerations? And all of this, was the beauty of tonight's presentation was she started off with a big natural environment and the pahu of that. And then she talked about the pahu that was once the ipu in her family. That was the biology that she got through her biology. And then how the other pahu came from her marriage relation. But then she was able to put it all together, and that's why there's a bulldozer out here, this tractor. She took all of this traditional foundations.
And we're digging deep.
And putting it in new, upgrading our electrical connections. So Rafa, that's a long, and you were part of our Hula program that I remember. I think weren't you our first graduate?
99.
Our first graduate, I just remember that now. But that is really a product that was not a product of Kikuhi and I. That was really an expansion.
Yeah.
And the trust, go and figure it out. And she wouldn't have given it if she thought we were shaky. And if she knew that Kikuhi and I were really a great team. And so she gave the expansion. It was scary work, because then you never know, because you can dance with strangers, but when you have, and I think boys, usually all of our great Unukukuku events since 2000, she's there. And she's there because it's appropriate that the teacher is there. But then it gives the teacher an opportunity to say how far her expansion has gone. That's one. And two, to open the door for her to correct anything I need to correct, which sometimes is not an easy thing. But she's always been kind with our processes. And she's been a greatest support, the Hulu people. So that's why, she's our, what we refer to as our Kuakunaka. Really, and we don't want to lose the human piece. And in technology, it's getting to the point where we don't need to have the human being anymore in some of our learnings. I don't think that's a bad thing, but some things you cannot get from just research alone. I think research is nice when it can support a human storyline. But the brilliance is took the experience and moved with it, and that's something you can go home. I don't know how many of you are Hula practitioners, and how many of you her storyline parallels with yours. I think what we want you to go home with is thinking about what do you know, what have you learned, what have you said no to, what have you said yes to, and how is it gonna 40 years removed? That's what you gotta look. 2 years to graduate with a degree, we get full of ourselves, and we get our 4-year, 6-year, 10-year degrees. But we're looking at the Hawaiian process, which might be 10, 20 years. In the case of Agnes, it was 30 years after or 40 years. And it was still in her body, and she gave it, passed it on. So those are the things we want you to think about. What are we passing on?
Yeah, what I want you to remember is the fact that when we say Hula Pahu, or talk about the Pahu, you also have to consider all of the different Pahus because that's what the chants are about. The chants are about all of the Pahus, not just that Pahu. And so I was giving you a wide expanse of the universe kind of thing, and then bringing you down to this Pahu. And so you should be able to go from this Pahu and take it back out. That's your lesson for tonight. How can you do that? So I went from there down, you take it from here and take it back out. See how this connects to the ocean, and how it connects to the forest, how it connects to the rain, how it connects to the clouds, how it connects to the birds, the bees. Because it does. It's a cycle. It connects. It's what is expanding continuously, generations of bees, generations of the generations of birds.
Do you have any mana'o before? We have just a few chants that we want to do in honor of who's worked with Agnes, and Agnes has worked with Kanahele, and obviously he had to work with somebody else prior to him, and then with someone else. Any of you have any mana'o? Yes.
Well, do you think that because you have a strong Hula background, that that's why she obviously, yeah. But then that's why you only took a month and a half, and then
Yeah, she did it because of that.
You were like this, wide open, but with the background.
Yeah.
Because a month and a half,
She trusted me.
you cannot teach any hula dancer, not any hula dancer, Yeah.
And there's her own little chants doing it, and her little chants.
But you understood the chant.
Her little chants, her little dances, her little beats. I have to, she's teaching me now. I want to make my husband shake. That's what happened to me. Don't make a time shake.
You said yes, so.
Yeah. That's why I do as much as I do, because I don't really good shake. Okay, what you going to do?
I was going to chant your name. Oh.
Okay, before you dance my name, can I have you dance,
Oh, wow.
Anyone else want to dance? No, you don't have to move
Ai, awai, tamae, tonomoku. Awa. You know, the great thing about hearing the story is knowing that it was the human being that carried this down. So how do you say thank you to a woman who at age 19, when I was 19, she says, yes, come and dance. And then she assigned Kamola to help me to learn really quick. So this is Kamola, my hula brother. And how do you say mahalo to that? And so we decided, well, I don't know we, but I decided, which I like to talk about plural meaning, that one of the best ways to honor, use the drum to honor what she had to do to continue that movement forward, and how she positioned some people to continue that also. So, Unu people, just dance what you like. Oh, hero, beluli, bayanga, waina, laniwa, ya hero, ego, ina, ina, bravo, hero, my oh, yende, walana, veno, hero, apano, pano, dawa, wagono, ideko, kanya, miro, gaya, dikemo, ogatala, hero, hero, kawa, hero, teaching. She says yes to learning. She says yes to learning. I say yes to learning. They say yes to learning. Good things only come from the yeses. All the no's people die and forget about. So, you know, as we approach the tomb, let's consider. Make sure we make opportunities. If the time is right, if the time is not right, then make it right. Okay. Again, we want to say thank you. You know, a great, not just the information is great, but just the idea of, you know, to have someone before us right in our community who gave birth to so much. And because it was natural for her to challenge and to get in there and dig up where people were not even thinking. I'm not talking about digging up, but, you know, metaphorically, digging up where people didn't want to touch, but knowing that there was something there. So, mahalo Polani for all that you've done for us. If you like what we do at Hawaii Community College and in the Keep Up High movement as we do at UHH Hilo, this is the AMI, this is the access.
So just say what?
Yes. And let us say no if we don't think. In fact, that's what she used to say. Like, who wants to do it? She'll say, we have to say yes. Then she'll say no if you're not appropriate. At least she said yes. It's an important thing. Don't be afraid of saying yes. Just adjust your life around that yes. It will work. If not you, it will flow to someone else. So make sure you're that person, or maybe not. Maybe you're not the right person, but be aware of that. Again, we're going to continue this kind of discussion, and we're going to have Kiku, he's going to facilitate, and then we have Kamuela that's going to be here, who dances with Auntie Edith, from Bikawa Makani Elia, who dances also with Auntie Edith, Kibalao Taylor, who dances with Auntie Edith, and we have been having one generation earlier than that, Miss Sharon Kalua, who dances with Auntie Kalei. She said, okay. Auntie, both, okay. So she's going to come and talk about Pahu's Hula at her time. Because now we're talking about learning Hula in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s and then the 80s. And then, you know, the same Hulas are going through all of these timelines, but they're telling us they have a different voice depending on the decades that we're listening to them. Sometimes they have to do with preparedness. How well we're able to hear, I'm not sure. This is
the other thing you know about the idea of the age is, I was born in 1937, and this is 2000, almost 2020. So yeah, so the continuation, I mean, it was before me, but from me for all of those years, and then we expect it to continue.
I want to introduce again, for some of you that came in later, this is Auntie Lena Alakanakaole. She's Auntie Po's eldest sibling. She's the eldest of Edith and Luca, and she was also a dancer under her grandmother. So we wanted to invite you to the panel, but I was too intimidated. I was too shy. You go ask your auntie. But what I do remember hearing, whenever the few times that people would share some family stories, was that Auntie Lena Ala was a beautiful dancer. She always remembered her older sister was a beautiful dancer. So it's nice to hear when another dancer says, can recognize that. And so, but this is Auntie Lena Ala. And you come ready to learn. We don't want you to walk away with information. We want you to go home and take this experience and begin to look at your life and the quality of life that you're living and see what you can do. How can you expand? How can you participate in the greater flow? Because once you don't live in the flow, then not good things can happen to your body. And then not to say everything else around you. So let's flow really well for the advancement of all of that is Hawaii. We have some over there things for you. Come talk story, but look like she's ready to go. So if you see her walking out the door, can you not stop her? Just let her go out the door. But thank you again.